I don't like to bother someone after a quote unquote loss. I don't think what happened at UFC 268 was a loss for Michael Chandler. I actually kind of forgot that it was a loss because of how great that fight was, because of the heart, because of the love afterwards, all the, the celebration of how great the fight was from both men. It didn't really register. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm being annoying here. And I know it was a war, and I know he went to the hospital, but like maybe I need to chill out. Well, thankfully, after I think 10 unanswered texts, because I'm very annoying like that, he finally replied and he agreed to come on the program. And so without further ado, let's go back to the Zoom machine and say hello to the one and only Michael Chandler. There he is. Hello, Michael. Was
Ariel,
I annoying? Was I annoying?
Ariel, it was 3 unanswered texts.
It was maybe, it was like 10. It was like, at least
it felt like 10.
It felt like 10 for me because usually you're very quick to reply. So I felt bad. I wasn't sure.
No, man. Number one, I appreciate you reaching out. I mean, you've seen the way I've handled losses and stuff in the past. I want to get right back out there, want to rip the Band-Aid off and get right back in the media. But goodness gracious, like you said, I don't want to justify losing ever. I want to win more. I want to win more than anybody. I do things right. I believe that I deserve to win. But it was the first time in my life that I got my hand grabbed by the referee and Justin Gaethje sitting over there. And at that moment, I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot. There actually is going to be a winner and a loser here right now because I was having that much fun. But it was a loss. But if there was ever a loss that feels like a win, this was one. Y'all were the beneficiaries of it. I think we all had a good time that night. It was a historic night, and here we are. We keep moving forward.
Okay, so there's so much to talk about, and thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. First things first, how are you feeling? I mean, we're not that far removed, like 9 or so days. How do you feel after that fight?
Feel like $1 million, man.
Really?
I went to, we both went to the hospital. Obviously, it wasn't even a question. They said, okay, go see the doctors now, and then your ambulance is right there. And I'm like, I got to go to the hospital. They're like, yeah, you got to go to the hospital. And you heard Dana in his post-fight, scrum, no questions asked. We were sending those guys to the hospital no matter what. Justin, it was funny. There's a video out there of Justin Gaethje trying to get into my ambulance because we didn't know where we were supposed to go. I've only taken 2 ambulance rides in my entire life. Both of them were from Madison Square Garden to Bellevue Hospital. But they were great there. Obviously I got stitched up a little bit. Got a couple CT scans and that kind of stuff just to, check the boxes. And I feel great, man. I do.
So nothing broken, no serious injuries?
No, not that we know of. All the x-rays checked out. I might get some more tests here and there just on like knee and hand and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, man, I'm still high on the loss that feels like a win.
Yeah.
I'm still high on the experience. I appreciate the love and support and just the way that everybody responded. And even, kudos to Yair and Max Holloway. Kudos to Peter Yan and Corey Sandhagen. I mean, look at the last couple cards that the UFC has put on. There's been some really, really great fights. And, 2011, when I shared the octagon with Eddie Alvarez, or shared the Bellator cage with Eddie Alvarez, and on the same night was Shogun Rua versus Dan Henderson. It's cool to be a part of some pretty historic nights in MMA history, and UFC 268 was one of them, and we'll see what happens next.
And last thing on the injuries, how many stitches total?
200 and no, I don't know. It was, I got some, some stitches. I think the cut over my right eye opened up in the first round, which made for a nice little bloody fight. Left eye, I got a couple. So I probably got like 10, 6, and like 4 inside my mouth. That uppercut that landed, I bit through my lip in a couple different places. But hey, man, it's all for the cause, I guess.
You shared a video. I believe your wife works in the medical field, right?
Yeah.
So very lucky.
My wife's a doctor. Yeah.
She got to take out the stitches.
She's taken out many of my sets of stitches. So, they said 5 to 7 days. We took it out on day 6 because they were starting to itch and I was ready to get them out. The ones inside my lip actually kind of untied just from talking and eating. All of a sudden I'd pull one out and be like, oh, there goes one, So those didn't last but a couple days. But lip feels fine. Head feels fine. My cup is full.
So going back to the fight now, Michael, we're watching this fight, and this is like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. This is like when you're playing a video game and you're just like smashing all the buttons. You're in the fight. Do you remember anything from the actual fight? Like, do you remember what is going through your mind? Are you thinking to yourself, holy crap, I can't believe he's not falling, I'm not falling, we're going back and forth? Like, what is actually, if anything, going through that brain of yours in the midst of one of the all-time great fights in UFC history?
I don't remember a lot from many of my fights. I've had, first round quick knockouts where I don't get touched, and I've had 25-minute wars. I've had obviously the 15-minute war with Gaethje. I don't remember a lot from it just because you're in the zone. Your adrenaline is pumping so high. You're not really thinking much. I will say, Madison Square Garden was so loud. I didn't hear my coaches one time during the fight. I heard them obviously in the corner. But the funny thing was, and it'd be funny if you interviewed Henry, he would probably be like, this was the most, I don't want to say ferocious / in the zone. He was talking to me, and he even had to be like, hey, are you listening? Hey, are you listening to me? Cause I wanted him to get rid of the stool. I wanted him to get out of there. I wanted to get back in Justin Gaethje's face. We were just having a blast. And, granted, was it the smartest way in the easiest path to victory to go win a fight against Justin Gaethje at Madison Square Garden, which really should have had title implications? Probably not, but I also can't control myself sometimes. I'm here to entertain. I loved competing. I loved fighting. I love fighting for the UFC. I love what the last 13 months has been about. And this was definitely a culmination. Fighting for the title a couple months ago was great, but this was different, and it felt historic. It felt like fight week, and we were leading up to a historic card as I'm signing the posters and as we're going through everything. And then it all culminated in, a possible fight of the year candidate. A lot of people said it's the best fight they've ever seen. So, obviously to be in those types of fights, you have to, take some damage and have some ups and some downs and get hurt here and win some, lose some in different moments. But so it's definitely a lot more fun to go knock someone out and collect a paycheck and go home and kiss your wife. But those knockdown, drag out wars solidify that that you're still here and you're legit.
Yeah. What is that like to be congratulated after a loss? Because I'm sure there is a part of you that's bummed that you didn't, when the story is told, there's a winner and a loser. In this one, it's like the classic case of there is no real loser, right? In the eyes of the public. Sometimes people like you more after a loss than a win. But is it a bittersweet pill to swallow for you because ultimately you didn't get your hand raised? How do you feel about it?
No, I don't, like I said, I don't want to sit here because I don't like when people justify losses and say, I don't like when people justify losses and act as though it was okay that they lost, because then you just are accepting of the loss and you accept that you didn't win. But for me, truthfully, yeah, I think now at this point, it feels win, lose, or draw, I was happy with the performance. It was a close fight. Some people will say Justin Gaethje beat me the entire time. There was definitely a judge who gave him 30-27. I get it. But just the way that the fight happened, the atmosphere, obviously the fans' reactions, the UFC's reaction, you and the media's reaction, it feels like a win, because truthfully, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it really happened when I came to the UFC. Are we there to collect wins and losses? Absolutely. Do we really want to win most of the time? Absolutely. But people aren't going to remember the wins and losses. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And I think the feeling that people got, it was the epitome of why people love this sport, was the feeling that they got from me versus Justin Gaethje at Madison Square Garden with everything on the line, and two dudes who we did exactly what we said we were going to do, right? You get a lot of blunder, a lot of trash talk, a lot of braggadocious, puffed up chest, talking about being a fighter, talking about coming forward, getting in the guy's face, being an exciting fighter. And some people just don't deliver. Justin Gaethje and I said we were going to do that, and we did it. So we are men of our word, if you in every sense of the word. And I'm happy with it, man.
What do you think happens if that's a 5-round fight?
I don't know. I'm glad it wasn't at the pace we were going. And that's even just, and truthfully, I would have had just a good a chance of, maybe finishing him in the 4th or the 5th, because the fight was going like that. I think both of us were landing big shots. He was landing big shots. I was landing big shots. We both got hurt. We both got wobbled. I'm glad it wasn't a 5-round fight. We both, took as much damage as we needed to take in 15 minutes. He gets to go off and hopefully get that title shot. I think he goes and beats Dustin Poirier or Charles Oliveira middle of next year. And then maybe we set up a rematch when I get a win or two, and we'll see what happens. But I'm glad it was only 15 minutes because we in a lot of ways, I think 15 minutes is actually better than 25 because there was no governor. There wasn't a brake pedal in sight. Neither of us touched a brake pedal whatsoever. We wanted to go as hard as we possibly could for 15 minutes. 25 minutes, you start venturing into the realm of your body shutting down and having to conserve energy.
Now, allow me just for a brief moment to be a bit of a negative Nancy.
Okay.
You are a father. You are a husband. You've been doing this a long time. Is there any part of you, when you get back, maybe it's even your wife who's like, that was great and all, but man, that's a lot of shots to the head. You know, like you want those moments. You want to be revered. You want to go down as a legend. You're already there. Is there any part of you that's like, it was a lot of damage and maybe a little too much damage. I don't want to deal with the effects of all of this in 5-6 years. Do you struggle with that at all?
You know, I think it's, I mean, it's definitely something you think about, because I also know myself. I know how I train. I know how hard I train. I know how hard it is on my body to cut weight. I've been cutting weight since I was 14 years old. I've competed within 152 pounds and 157 pounds since I was 16 years old. And I'm getting bigger and bigger. I'm not a natural 155 pounder anymore. If I was an inch or two taller, it would be no question I would be fighting at 170. So it's the weight cuts, it's the time away from family, it's the damage, because I know that I only know one way to fight. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm going to go out there and get into a fast-paced, violent fight with people and then go out there and putz around and be lackluster. That's just it's not in my DNA. As you saw with this last fight, I could have been a little bit more diplomatic, conserved a little bit of energy, taken less damage, taken less risk. I could have done all those things, but it's not in my DNA, man. I can't do it, so I got to know that. And I know that about myself. It's going to keep people on the edge of their seats and I'm enjoying it. But like I said, I wasn't going to be here for a long time. I was going to be here for a good time. I've had a blast the last, 13, 14 months being signed with the UFC. Definitely got some big fights on my horizon, and I've definitely got many more fights left in me. But it's something I always think about because I made a promise to you. I made a promise to the UFC. I made a promise to the media, the fans, my training partners, my coaches, but all of those pale in comparison to the promise that I made to my wife in 2014 and my son in 2017. And I take the most pride in being a father and husband. So of course I put a little bit more weight in those promises. But man, this train ain't slowing down anytime soon. We're enjoying the process and got some big fights coming up.
And I'll ask you about those in a second, but I'm just curious, was the game plan actually to be a little less, violent, if you will? Like, did you stray away because you were in there against Justin Gaethje, who seems to bring that out in people?
It was, and I had to apologize to my wife because I told her what the game plan was. The game plan was, because I think I beat Justin Gaethje in a wrestling match, 9 times out of 10. And that's not any disrespect to him. I just think my wrestling is better than his. I could have used my wrestling more. I could have used the cage control a little bit more. I could have grabbed hands, underhooked, grabbed the head. I could have made it a little bit more of a close quarters type of fight instead of, going out there throwing big shots. But once the fight started, I reverted back to who I am as a person. I reverted to what courses through my DNA, which is just fighting, man. And I loved it. And I loved what Justin Gaethje said after the fight. I didn't hear it while I was in the cage because when you're in the octagon, you can't really hear what they're saying. He's like, we were born in the wrong time. We should have been 2 gladiators fighting to the death. And the sad thing is, he's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And that's even what I said to him after the fight. I was like, dude, I knew you didn't dislike me. I knew that you knew this about me. I knew that you knew that I was your equal. And we had a blast, man. Hats off to him. I think Justin Gaethje is going to be our lightweight champion by the middle of next year.
Now that you've been in there with him, is he better than you thought he was?
No, I got to watch myself. No, I don't think so. I think, I don't think so. And that's not to take anything away from him. I think we watch his performances. We watch all these guys' performances. And that's why it's so important to watch fights live, to watch fights in person. When I fought Dan Hooker, I was doing my media and the UFC had me doing a bunch of media and stuff and back. And I was like, hey, I want to get out there. I want to go see Conor versus Poirier. Because at that point, I thought I was going to fight the winner. Ended up not happening. But things just slow down. Whenever you get inside there, whenever you get inside the octagon, you feel everything slows down actually in person. You watch it on TV, you watch Justin Gaethje's highlights, the human in you is like, dang, dude, I got to go fight this dude. Look how fast and powerful and strong and cardio. And he is all those things, but it humanizes the individual. And there was even moments in the fight where I think even after he dropped me, couldn't finish me, I got in on the leg, I stood up, and you can kind of see him, slow down a little bit, because there's nothing worse in mixed martial arts than when you got a guy dead to rights and you can't finish him because he's just too hard to finish, and it messes with your psyche. So not to take anything away from him, I think he was exactly who I thought he was. He was exactly what I expected. And I think it proved that, I'm one of those guys. I'm one of those guys in the top of the division, whether I won this fight or lost this fight, the way it went down. And yeah, man, it was a lot of fun.
By the way, were you always one of those guys? Like Mike Chandler 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, does he go toe to toe with someone like Justin Gaethje like that? Or is this something that you've learned about yourself, about how far you can actually go over the last few years?
No, it's always been me, man. That's how I've always been. That's how I wrestled. I wasn't the most talented guy. By many people's standard, I was a walk-on at the University of Missouri. I got my hat, got my shirt. Like that's kind of my mantra. It's like I was a walk-on. I was under-talented. I was under-respected. I was underutilized. I was seen as a guy who, had to work his way up. So in order to be seen, in order to work your way into, I wrestled with guys that were multiple time state champions from states that were much better than high school wrestling in Missouri. And all of them quit, or none of them made the team. And I somehow was a walk-on and ended up, after a couple of years, becoming a team captain, 4-time NCAA qualifier, and All-American in one of the toughest weight classes that has ever been assembled, with Jordan Burroughs and Mike Poeta, Gregor Gillespie, like some of these guys that were just head and shoulders above where I was when I came into college. So I had to always just get in their face, pull on their head, shoot 1,000 shots, push them off the mat, break them down to where they looked at me and said, gosh, dang, this guy ain't that good, but I am having a hard time beating him. So I took that kind of same walk-on mentality into mixed martial arts. And it just says, the mentality is that, hey, man, come hell or high water, you ain't going to finish me unless you separate me from consciousness. I will be able to push harder than you because of what I did for the last 8-10 weeks, what I did in the gym, who I'm training with, how I'm training, how I treat my body like a professional athlete, what I eat, how I sleep, how I approach the game is just, I think, different than a lot of people. But with that also comes the mentality of, I'm going to be in your face for 6 minutes in high school, 7 minutes in college, now 15 or 25 minutes in a cage somewhere in front of millions of people. And eventually, I'm going to get a finish, or I'm going to wear you down so much that I beat you on the judges' scorecards. Doesn't always happen that way, obviously. Case in point, last fight, but it's worked out pretty darn well for me over the last 20-something years now as an athlete.
He was critical of the referee, Mike Beltran, for that sequence with the eye poke, and said he almost cost him $1 million. What was your take on all of that?
Yeah, no, man. Number one, Mike Beltran is a phenomenal referee. I love Mike Beltran. And truthfully, I'd have to go back and really watch. It was an interesting eye poke. It wasn't a straightforward eye poke. It was more of I throw a lot of 3-2 down the middle. And I think it did graze I don't know if his eye was closed or it touched his eye. Number one, Justin Gaethje isn't the type of guy to ever complain or lie about an eye poke. So let's all just throw that out the window. My finger must have touched his eyeball, or he felt like he got poked. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can't question Justin Gaethje. How far Mike Beltran was away from it, and he did say something, and I even heard him. I heard him say it, but unless you step in, I got to keep fighting. That's what we have to do as mixed martial artists. Now, if Mike Beltran would have came in and touched me, that one extra shot wouldn't have been thrown. So to any fans out there who think it was a dirty shot, I'm sorry, but as mixed martial artists, you got to keep going until the referee pulls you off of him, or stops you. And that's really what it was. But, it had to have been legit, because we're talking about Justin Gaethje here. And I would imagine he would say the exact same thing if it were me who got eye poked, that, I'm not taking any kind of, fake eye pokes or fake advantages in a fight.
We showed the picture moments ago. He posted it right after the fight, you guys together, I think in the ambulance, right? When he tried
No,
to.
in the hospital. We were
Okay.
we were both walking around and wheeling around in the hospital, just talking about the fight, talking about golf.
What was that like? You just go in this war with this guy in the cage in front of millions of people, and then you're just chilling. Like what is that like? What a picture! Iconic stuff.
That's the thing, man. It's. I think, like I said, I think me and Justin Gaethje are cut from the same cloth, man. We're wrestlers, dude. Like we used to rub elbows with and have to cut weight next to and be around the guy you're going to wrestle. Like, okay, I know I'm going to probably wrestle him in the semis because he's going to beat that guy and I'm going to beat that guy. You get used to being around these people. And when you get around them, number one, there's an immense amount of respect. I have an immense amount of respect for Justin. He has a ton of respect for me. I think for him, his motivation is a little bit different. He needed to tell himself that he didn't like me in order to get to where he needed to be. But I also knew that about him, that he didn't dislike me. He just needed to put himself there until he got his hand raised. And then you saw us embrace and talk right after the fight. We both limped back to the back. We're freaking high-fiving each other. He's talking about how his leg was all jacked up from my leg kicks because we're separated by one curtain in these two little there's a doctor here and a doctor here, and there's one curtain. I heard him talking, and I heard him talking about the leg, and I was like, dang, dude, you're telling me I hurt the best leg kicker in the game. I hurt his leg with my leg kicks. He goes, and he said something, and I was talking about my leg because my leg's jacked up from his leg kicks. Obviously, my face was a little bit more beat up than his was. There's just mutual respect, man. He's your favorite fighter for a reason. Anybody who's listening, Justin Gaethje is your favorite fighter for a reason. We love what he does. We love how he fights. We love the entertainment that he brings. And I hope people say the same thing about me, because to me, there's things that are so much bigger than the sport, and honestly, someday, me and him are going to be, actually I texted Kamaru that week too, because Kamaru Usman used to be a training partner of mine, now trains with him. I just wanted to text him and be like, yo, dude, number one, I love you. Number two, like someday we're all going to be, toasting back some, a cold beer or a cocktail or something, talking about this and how we made people feel about what we get to do, as the sport of mixed martial arts grows and touches every aspect of every corner of the globe and every type of human being you can think. It's still a tiny, tiny little small circle of people. And me and Justin Gaethje are cut from the same cloth. So yeah, the hospital was fun. He actually got on to me. He's like, dude, get in your, cause he was already in a bed and I didn't quite have a bed yet. So I'm like limping around and walking around. You're like, dude, what are you doing? Get in a bed somewhere, like find a bed. So it was just fun, man. It was definitely fun.
So on the Monday after the fight, 2 days later, you make it very clear you want Conor next, right? You want Conor McGregor next. Is that accurate?
I mean, I think everybody wants to fight Conor, obviously. But I want to fight him for a different reason. I think everybody wants to fight Conor because they know it's a big payday. I'm here in mixed martial arts to do big things, to be in big fights, big stages against big opponents in big arenas with a lot of eyeballs. That's what excites me about a fight with Conor. I got a ton of respect for Conor because what Conor has done, and people will discredit what he has done because of certain things that he has said, but what he has done is revolutionize the entire sport. The sport of mixed martial arts is better because Conor McGregor is in it. It's bigger and it's got more eyeballs on it because of what Conor has done. So to share the octagon with him, that's why I want to do it. It's not the payday. It's not the red panty night. It's not the thing that all these other fighters are chasing. Of course, do I want that? Do I want to provide for my family? Of course. But I want epic moments of maximum amounts of impact. And that's what you get when you fight Conor McGregor. So, we'll see what happens. I wish him well in his recovery. It looks like out there on social media and stuff, he's back to training and he's moving around, but he's gonna, he needs some time and he deserves some time. He's set for life. He doesn't need to fight. That's another thing you got to remember. He doesn't need to fight. The man's set for life financially. He fights because he loves it. He fights because of what it does to his soul, what he gets to do with his platform. So I think it's a fight that makes sense. I think I'm a guy who has solidified myself inside the top of the division. Conor needs to come back and get a win, but he's also got a ton of options. So we'll see what happens.
Realistically, after a fight like that, when would you like to return?
I don't know. I just got back from, rehab earlier. I'm going back to rehab after this, I'm just taking care of my body. Like we said, it's not just the training, it's the recovery after the fights and how I treat myself between the fights. So I've been spending a lot of time, I'm going to rehab for, a couple weeks. I'm going to get on the bike, start getting some cardio in and stuff. It definitely won't be till, first quarter of next year, late first quarter of next year, if not middle of next year.
I would imagine.
I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. I've talked to the UFC every couple of days. They're checking in on me, and I'm checking in with them and getting through all the stuff. But it's a couple big fights for sure in 2022.
So there's a hot debate now. Khabib has gotten involved. Should Gaethje get a title shot? I think he should after a performance like that. Others are saying Islam. Your take is, as you alluded to earlier, Gaethje should fight whomever is the winner of the main event on December 11th, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, and you predict he wins that fight. Yes?
Yes. I think Justin Gaethje's body of work, he was the number one contender. I mean, and that was a thing too. Justin also, I don't know what the deal was, why, you rewind, you got Conor and Poirier tied up in the trilogy that they had to get done. A title needed to be fought for when Khabib retired. It was me, Justin Gaethje, and Charles Oliveira who were on the short list of guys who were going to fight for that title. Me and Oliveira obviously fought for it. Justin Gaethje, as he said, if you were, number one, fought number 5, number 3, fought number 4, whatever. And if you were number 2, you got effed, whatever his quote was. But it was true. I think Justin Gaethje is the clear-cut number 1 contender. He just beat me, number 4. Makhachev, obviously, the way he dispatched Dan Hooker was absolutely phenomenal. What he did was great. Does it warrant a title shot? Not compared to what Justin Gaethje has done. That's my thought.
Okay, and then and Gaethje beats Oliveira. You know Oliveira, you know him quite well. You know of Dustin. He beats them both.
I think so. I think Justin Gaethje breaks Charles Oliveira, but I think the more likely scenario is Poirier wins that fight because I think he has more tools and I think he's just better in certain areas and he's not going to get submitted by Oliveira, even though we have seen an increased striking level by Oliveira, as you saw in our fight. But I think Justin Gaethje cleans up a couple things, remembers how he lost to Dustin Poirier a couple years ago, and I think he wins the title middle of next year.
2 last quick things. And again, thank you so much for the time. I just have to ask, because I asked him about you, so I feel like I need to ask you, what's going on with you and Iangary? Is there a beef there? What's happening over there, Mike?
Oh, no, there's not. What did he say?
He said something, and you did an interview, I think, with Helen Yee, where you're like, hey, he missed practice, and people were wondering if there was and he says he likes to annoy you and likes to say that he, can go toe-to-toe with you in sparring. And now people are wondering if there's a bit of a kid brother tugging on your shirt type of thing. What's going on over there?
No, I love Ian. I do. Man, and I was pumped up that he got that win. We shared a locker room. It's just hard. It's hard to compartmentalize for me. I don't do it well. I can't be a normal guy on fight week. Matter of fact, I'm probably one of the worst people in the world on fight week. It's the weight cut. It's the pressure. It's my attention to detail, and anybody else who kind of comes in between me and my attention to detail and my preparation, it just throws things off, But I love Ian. I think Ian, his nickname is the future for a reason. I do think he is the future. I did have to call him out for missing practice. That's fine. You miss practice, you're getting called out. Not everybody. I gotta. Next time you interview Brendan Allen, you gotta ask him about the line. No, not everybody deserves to be here, because I say that a lot. Especially with us training at Sanford Mixed Martial Arts, I believe we have the best stable of training partners, the best team, the best facility, and the best coaches on the planet. So therefore, not everybody deserves to just show up and be here. So there takes a certain level of commitment, a certain level of discipline, and a certain level of excellence that's expected of you. And I'm not saying Ian isn't that, but I am saying, you miss practice, you're going to be called out about it. If you show up right on time, you're late. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. If you're the first person in the showers, you could have done a little bit more. I'm not saying that Ian is that, but of course I had to call him out for missing practice, especially wrestling practice. Wrestling, I'm a wrestler through and through, man. You miss wrestling practice, you might have commitment issues. So I like to give him, crap about it. He's got a bright future. I love him. I love what he stands for. I love his approach to the game. We're just in two different. I've been around the block a couple times, and he's the new kid on the block, So there's different things that he is naive to, and there's different things that I wish I was a little bit more naive to when it comes to preparation and training. And, I'm all in. I'm 100% all in, committed to this thing. And sometimes that comes out, and I gotta, give some people a tongue lashing.
I respect it. Last thing for you, what a year, as you mentioned, 12, 13 months, around a year ago exactly, you're weighing in as the backup fighter, all that hullabaloo. It's amazing to me because the record books will say you were 1-2 over the last, 12 or so months. I would argue you're infinitely more popular today than you were 12 months ago. No one really cares that you're 1-2. You produced 3 incredible fights, 3 exhilarating finishes, good or bad, whatever. It just an amazing. How would you even put into words the last 12, 13 months of your life? And has it exceeded your expectations as to what you thought was coming your way when you signed with this organization?
It has exceeded my expectations 100-fold. I think, I knew a couple of years ago, I signed another deal with Bellator for 2 years. And by the way, I talked to Scott Coker a couple of days ago. He sent me a message. Rich Chu sent me a message. Mike Kogan sent me a message. I mean, these guys, these guys were a part of my life for a very long time. I'm still in their corner in a lot of ways. But I knew signing with them, that last contract, I wanted to change, but it just didn't feel right. When I did make the change to test free agency and then come over to the UFC, it was the exact right time. As you saw with Khabib retiring, I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better for me. So it worked out extremely well. And then you add on that the platform. Like I said, I'm in this sport to make an impact, and an impact has been made over the last 13 months, 14 months being signed with the UFC, because the stages are so big. The platform is so big. The opportunities just keep getting bigger and bigger. And as you said too, does the record really, I hate even saying it, but does the record really even matter sometimes whenever you're doing what you're doing? Like, why do you love the sport? Do you love whoever your top 3 favorite guys are? Do you even really care about the record? It's one of my favorite fighters on the planet is Robbie Lawler. Doesn't have a great record, but goodness gracious, one of the most professional, hardest training, most attention to detail, best leaders, best fighters on the entire planet. And he's a perfect example of that. Some of the biggest stars on the planet, we don't care whether they win or lose. Once again, it goes back to, how do they make us feel? Why do we buy the pay-per-views? Do we buy the pay-per-views because they're undefeated? Or do we buy the pay-per-views because how we feel and the experience that we have whenever they toe the line and they bite down on the mouthpiece and they go out there and compete? So I don't say that to justify my record. I think beating Dan Hooker, losing in a title fight, and then losing a fight of the year candidate to Justin Gaethje has been, as good of a start as I ever could have expected. The platforms have been huge. The eyeballs and the notoriety has been extremely humbling, and we ain't slowing down anytime soon. It's just going to keep on getting bigger and bigger. So I'm excited about it.
You don't need me to say this, but on behalf of the MMA community, thank you for that. That was incredible stuff. That was really, you know how everyone feels about that fight, how they feel about you and Justin, but thank you for that. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for the entertainment. I'm happy that you're okay. It was pretty, I can't imagine what your wife is thinking while watching that fight. Got to be terrifying, but much respect, my man. You have come a long way. You exercised those demons of MSG many years ago. You're a legend. I hope you take some time off. Happy holidays. And most importantly, thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And sorry for the text. I didn't mean to be annoying.
No, you're good. It was like 3 or 4, man. Don't throw it out there like you were too crazy. It was only like 3 or 4. So we're good. I got a couple text messages on my phone I need to get back to. So if anybody's listening and you have texted me, sorry, I'll get back to you eventually.
Much respect, Michael. Thank you so much. Get well soon, and can't wait for the next one.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Ariel. Appreciate it, man.
All right, there he is. Iron Michael Chandler. What a fight. What a performance. What a night. UFC 268. Holy smokes.